This is for the nerds, this is for the brainiacs, this what we deserve. Go ahead and play it back, you ain't gonna touch me, you not gonna do nothing, you are not above me, I bet you wish you was me, I know it, I know nerds. This is for the brainiacs, this what we deserve. Go ahead and play it back, I know it, I know.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another Solve For Why Vlogcast. This is episode number 30, season 2, and we are reunited with the one and only Christian Soto. Still in Jersey. It's, what are you, on winter hiatus at this point? It's been 3 months.
I don't know. This is unprecedented times.
Most people don't winter in Jersey, you know? Once you get rich, the whole thing is that you winter elsewhere, you know, where it's warm.
I'm not rich. I'm just here.
Bitcoin's $52,000. One Bitcoin is a house. It's a
house, not here.
It's a nice car. 1 Bitcoin is a nice car. 2 Bitcoins is for sure a house. Maybe
not here.
You can't get $100,000 house.
No. Ain't no houses here for 100,000.
Fine,
bro. The lowest house by my neighborhood is $500,000. That's the lowest you're gonna get.
How fucking rich?
Well, I'm not saying my neighborhood is that nice. I'm just saying we're right next to New York City, so there's no house that's gonna be like less than $500,000.
Right, well, where I grew up, I could get 2 houses for 2 Bitcoins for sure, and I could get a mansion for 4 Bitcoins.
So what are you doing, man? Let's go over there, start a whole development.
No. Pittsburgh, in and of itself, the real estate market in the city has definitely gone way up. I'm so salty about this. I think I was telling maybe Andre or somebody else about this a few days ago, but in 2010 or 2011, the north side, which is where all the stadiums are and where they built the casino, was just super run down. It was low income housing mostly. And it was kind of the outskirts of the city. It was right across the river from downtown, but nobody who worked in downtown really lived there. People live in the suburbs because the actual downtown part of Pittsburgh is very small. So he knew that they were building the casino, and he just had the foresight to recognize that they were going to gentrify that area and really develop it. So he bought a 2-bedroom condo, or not, sorry, a 2-bedroom townhouse. Pretty run down. I've actually stayed in it a few times. It's not run down anymore, but he put I don't know, I think he paid $200,000 for it, maybe even significantly less, $100,000, and then put $20,000 or $30,000 in renovations. And for the last 8 years, he's been renting it on Airbnb, and he's at 90% capacity, renting it for $200 a night. So he paid off the mortgage in
it's done.
No, he paid it off in 16 months or something like that. And he's just been profiting $250,000 a year since. Ended up getting multiple properties like this. Tried to convince me to do it, but it was right on the verge of me going broke. I'm just real estate. What the fuck can I know?
It's hard, man. The real estate game's hard. I think my parents were telling me that they want to buy they want me to buy a property or whatever, and I'm just I was if I put $100K down payment, but it's then Bitcoin could go up to $100K, and then
it's just not worth it. I bought my house. Here's my cautionary tale. All right, first of all, if you're gonna live in it, don't plan to make any money investing on it, because you're just gonna want all the customizations, right? It's like buying the base model of a reasonable car, and then just realizing you're gonna dump a bunch of fucking money into it because you want all the sickest stuff. I built my house on a half a acre lot, and it's 4,300 square feet, something like that. Closed bare floor, so it meant that it closed without flooring or appliances, for $650K. A fucking steal, an absolute steal, right?
Sure.
But now I have to put floors in, and I have to put appliances in. Okay, you should be able to do that for if you're
100.
way less. If you're conservative, you should be able to do this for 30 or 40. On the other hand, spent $80,000 on a whole new kitchen. I spent $80,000 on my.
Kitchen is nice though.
Yeah, it's nice. And I got convinced that resale value. whatever. Like you're never recouping that 80K, right?
No.
Like having a super nice kitchen might increase your resale value by like 1-2%, but never by whatever you fucking put into it. And I spent 130,000 on a pool, and like by the time it was all said and done, I was like an extra 400 out of pocket in. So
Well, Benba paid for the pool, but
Benba did pay for the pool. I appreciate shout out to my man Ben Lamb. I played short deck once and we got him. But yeah, so like when it was all said and done, I think I'm into my house total for like 950 to $1 million, and it's up massive. I think right now it's appraising for like 1.1, 1.2. But like I'm barely not underwater. And the market's inflated. The market's massively inflated, right? It's up almost 100% in 4 years. That's not gonna. I should just fucking sell the thing and get out now. Make like $30,000 and call it a day.
Have an extra $1 million in your pocket.
No. I have a mortgage, man.
I mean, what are you gonna do?
I would have debt.
Yeah, I think it's a good game. I mean, it's just so hard right now. Like, I mean, and maybe we're all delusional, right? But it's just like investing in anything that's not Bitcoin seems like not good. I don't know. Like,
I think all major asset classes are just like massively inflated right now. I'm having my cousin sending me all my baseball cards as we speak. I have like an album of every Barry Bonds card that was ever made between like 80...
Damn, I did that for A-Rod.
Probably worth something if you still have it.
Yeah, I'll have to check it.
I don't know the condition that mine are in. I hope they're in decent, but I don't know. But it's probably a few $1,000s worth of cards. I have like all of his rookie cards.
Pretty cool, yeah. No, I mean you might find some gems though. You never know.
Yeah. But on top of like these 80 or 100 Barry Bonds cards that I had, I probably have 1,000 others that were just thrown away. Like I know I had like Griffey rookie cards and basically everybody who is like late 80s, early 90s. I probably have like complete sets, but they're almost certainly trashed.
Probably like 0 Dominicans in your fucking collection.
No, I bet I have some Pedro Martinez stuff. Almost certainly.
Yeah, Pedro's nasty.
You don't even know what team he started on. I have his rookie. I had his rookie card for sure.
He started in Montreal.
Yeah. He was on the Expos.
Come on, bro.
I have Vladdy stuff too, for sure, when he was on the Spos. Well, I don't have them anymore. They're gone. But the whole point I'm trying to make is that the dollar is seemingly very volatile right now. So a lot of institutional money is looking for asset classes. And whether that's real estate, Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies, trading cards, digital trading cards, like literally anything that they think is a store of value at this point, they're just like all in on it. Like put it on the books.
Yeah, it's a fact. All right, talking about investing, right? One of the things, obviously the big story that you guys spoke about last week was Landon, right? Landon and the Heads Up Challenge with both Bill Perkins and, a little bit of action that is to be determined on Rob Young. And I guess, people, the major problem that people were talking about were like, oh, you don't have your action, but just kind of like a little bit of hate from like J-Mo and shit like that. You know what I'm saying? So it was, it felt weird, right? And then Landon, he puts up this tweet, as you can see, he's like, I'm selling a lot of action. I'm not really rolled for this kind of a nosebleed thing. So like, I guess from our side, right? Like, people are definitely curious. Like, we are two of the people that invest in Landon, right? I don't know if he's open about like the entire group, but we are two of them, right? So I guess, when this came out, I personally wasn't like too happy about it. I thought that it was like kind of, I'm not like, because we don't know necessarily like Heads Up, right? We saw a little bit of the Heads Up stuff with the graphs from Doug Polk that he tweeted out today and things like that. But generally we wouldn't know how much Landon is beating somebody like Bill Perkins for, right? So then the other thing I wanted to talk about was, our general feeling when that came out. potentially our general feeling now, and what do we think about just like poker investing in general, with like horses and stuff like that?
Yeah, so I think I kind of shared your sentiment. And here's the thing, like, Landon has no problem selling for this match whatsoever.
For sure.
Like literally none. There are a lot of people who chomping at the bit to get a piece of this for sure, because they think it's a super plus EV spot. And I also think that that's true. I think Landon is winning. I think he's winning more than the 9 big blinds. How much more, difficult to say. We really don't have a measuring stick for that, especially because Landon's only played, prior to this challenge, or sorry, prior to preparing for this challenge, maybe 20,000 hands of heads up, which isn't much. And there's a big difference between 6 max and heads up. I see it myself whenever I try to play in heads up spots, and I see it against others now that I'm a little bit more knowledgeable about heads up, where it's very clear that they're ring players and they're just trying to attribute those. Basically, they're just like way too tight in all spots. And I know that like when I was playing a lot of heads up on WSOP and doing well, most of that may have been born off of the fact that like I was just too tight in spots where people thought like I was more capable. In any event, though, I think that the reason why we are justified in our concern is not because Landon isn't printing money here, and it's not because it's not a good investment. It's because the volatility of this investment is astronomical. So an example of this is Nick Howard's brother, Patrick. They have a lot of data, and he reached out to me and he was basically like, hey, I just want to let you know, like, I've been crunching some numbers and this is effectively what I arrived at. Like, he was saying that if Landon is winning 15 big blinds per 100, then essentially he fails this challenge. And you can see it here on the graph. The probability of running below observed win rate is about 33%. So that means about 1/3 of the time, Perkins ultimately comes out the winner here. And the issue is that we're laying a pretty big price, right? So, I guess like if you're investing in Landon, you're not really laying a price, but like the betting market will be laying a pretty fair price. Now, to be fair, they're probably still going to be getting the right side of it, right? Like as long as you're not laying 2-1 more, you're still effectively getting the right side of it. But the whole point is that like, this is going to be a risk of like 2 million, let's say, and 1/3 of the time we're going to lose at least 1/3 of that 2 million, right? Because we're spotting him 720,000 or something like that. So it's a really, really, really risky endeavor. And obviously that's plotted off of Landon winning 15 blinds per 100. Well, the inverse of that now is, what does he win the 2/3 of the time that he profits? And we're assuming it to be about 6 big blinds per 100, which works out to be roughly, I think it works out to be about $500,000 when it's all said and done, maybe a little bit less. So a little bit less, like 400K actually. And it's like, okay, well, that's not spectacular. You know what I mean? It's like, so 2/3 of the time we win 400K, 1/3 of the time we lose at least 700K. And
it feels like it's even in like that kind of a split, right?
Well, it can almost be worse because we're not capped at the 700K loss, right? And obviously we're not obviously capped at the 400K win either. But like within the realm of standard deviation, it's going to work out basically on average, where it's like, yeah, Landon's just really not. If his win rate, if his true win rate is 15 big blinds per 100 over the course of this 20,000 hand match, then yeah, like he's putting in a lot of hours in hands for not very much money. And from the investment side, that's not like super, super attractive.
Do you have the same concerns of the match where maybe he's winning 15 big blinds hand 1, but not necessarily hand 20,000?
No, because I think if he's winning 15 big blinds at hand 1, I don't think Perkins can close that gap faster than like I don't think the same diminishing returns exist for Landon as they did for Doug. Doug was like pretty high up on the heads up hierarchy already. So
Right. It's much different.
yeah, his refinement process was really just going to be like tweaking some pre-flop strategies and you know, eking out a big blind here or there by applying a little bit more perfectly post. I think Landon will, and I trust the group of people that are working with Landon too, in the sense that they're not just solver driven.
Yeah.
I think that they're very adjustment driven. So if they see and can key in on some spots where like it's very clear Perkins is improving in this particular area where we were deriving a fair amount of win rate before, we now need to balance out that area and start to look for other holes, because you can't when you're in Perkins's shoes, unless he comes in 4 months prepared already and you know has already closed the gap massively. Without that being the case, you can't cover all your bases, right? If you get really good at one thing that your opponent was exploiting you at, then there are going to be 2 or 3 other things that are going left unstudied.
What do you think? I mean, I agree with you. I like when the team was being set up of Landon, I think everyone kind of agreed that we wanted a team that wasn't necessarily just going to be like a solver team. It was going to be like a more complete like team of people, and I think his team is pretty good. In terms of Perkins, what do you like? You know, you had your opinion on like what Daniel should do, right, going in. What do you think is like would be Perkins's approach, like, of coming in?
I mean, for him, it's like if he could show up day one and play the way Daniel played, like he's gonna make this a fucking nightmare for Landon.
But what if he shows up playing the way Daniel played hand one?
I still think it's kind of the same thing. If he can progress the same way that Daniel did, I think that it's going to be a problem for Landon. Not in the sense that Landon loses the challenge. I think I think if that were the case, he probably wins a little bit more than his fair share of the 67%. But yeah, I guess like it just depends on how hard Bill's willing to work. And like this is a narrative that I really want to crush, because it's one that I hear flippantly being thrown around a lot in the group chatter, like our little inner circle of just like, you know, Perkins has never finished one of these challenges. He's not going to put the work in. There's just a good probability that he doesn't care enough about this spot, that Landon's sheer will, desire, and you know, risk factor is going to make him a massive favorite. I don't think that's true. I don't think. I mean, don't get me wrong. I basically I think like either Bill shows up day one, uber prepared, and this is going to be a dogfight, or the match just never happens. I don't really think that there's some in between where like he plays 20,000 hands with the exact knowledge that he possesses today.
I think I agree with that. I think, yeah, I could see a world where Bill says like, I don't really want to play anymore. Here's like, you know, here's 30K. Like, I don't want to bother with this anymore. Or there's another world where he wants to play, and he wants to do well. You know, I agree with you. I don't really see an in between though with Bill, right? Like he's like kind of all in or he's out. You know, he's not like kind of like a like, okay, I'll give it a shot type of thing. Like he's more like no. We're gonna die with 0 or we're gonna live forever. Like it's like he's not that, you know.
I think people see him as just like a really wealthy, almost playboy type who doesn't have the time or energy to dedicate 3 months to poker, let alone 6 months to poker study and play. And that's probably very true. But I'm pretty confident that he acquired that level of wealth and status in his life by being willing to make 3 and 6 month sacrifices. So
for sure.
Yeah,
right?
if this is just something that is on his radar to being priority number one, I think he'll make it priority number one. And I don't think he's as incompetent as we paint him. Like I don't think the broad brush of incompetent wreck fits somebody of like Perkins' narrative.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's like definitely a bright dude, and then if he wants to do it, maybe he's like always wanted to do something like this, you know. Like, and he just like never had the time, and maybe there's like a little window of time right now where he could do it.
Yeah. I would also just
Who
be more
knows?
confident in him being lazy and unstudied and unprepared if he didn't have the same access that Daniel has.
Yeah, different. It's a different. Yeah, it's a little bit. It's nice when you have a team that you could just like go to, right? Which for them, it's kind of like, oh, here, just you already have, like, you don't have to do the whole setup, right? It's like kind of already built in. Like, okay, this is what we did for Daniel. This is what worked. This is what didn't work.
Right.
We're moving forward with this stuff from the get go, and it's
Right.
like a second go around for them again.
Yeah, they get to refine their
It's kinda
process,
nice.
and he becomes a blank slate. So it's just really a matter of like how well can you translate one onto the other.
What did you think about the Daniel versus Phil Hellmuth situation?
I heard it's a go. I think Phil greenlit.
Yeah, they're
it.
gonna play. They're gonna play on High Stakes Feud.
Yeah.
So that'll be the next challenge. As you see the Real Kid Poker tweet here, he said he'll play you, big guy, and wherever. And they ended up agreeing to it. Oh, it looks like. Oh, okay, yeah. This is like, they get the setup between Dwan and Ivy and whoever, but they ended up now getting Real Kid Poker. So yeah, I mean, I think the market is going to heavily favor Daniel.
Yeah,
Like,
I agree.
Huge in this match.
I think I would take Phil.
That's the thing. I was about to say that. Like, this
getting
matchup,
the right
like,
price, I think I would take Phil because of the format.
Yeah, the format is just it's in Phil's like doghouse, right? It's like,
well, here's the thing:
this...
when the blinds continually increase, when you're playing a sit and go instead of cash, redlining isn't that important at all, right? So it's so much about volatility and stack preservation, and those are two things that like Daniel just didn't have to concern himself with in this heads up challenge. So a lot of the things that Daniel got really fucking good and great at aren't going to apply, because he's going to be against an imbalanced opponent who is never bluffing at the proper frequencies. So, you put yourself in a situation. Imagine playing a heads up match where your bluff catchers underperformed so much that you had to fold most of them. Like, how much?
Yeah, but it can't be both ways, right?
Well,
because then he just gets to run him over, right?
No, but that's the thing. The redlining doesn't really matter, right? Because think about the instances through which he'll run Phil over. Basically, the very first adjustment that he'll have to make is folding the big blind at a significantly higher rate, because Phil's just not opening a proper range on the button, right? If you reduce Phil's opening range to like 35% or something of that nature, suddenly you can't VPIP 80 from the big.
Yeah, the thing was, so Phil was running he was running like a 70-10 in terms of 70% limp and 10% open versus Antonio.
And that makes sense to me.
Which is not something we see often, right?
Right, but even again now, so that lowers volatility from his standpoint, which is great. He's just going to overfold from the big blind, which isn't going to matter all that much. Like, sure, he's losing maybe 0.75 big blinds instead of 0.5 from that position, or something of that nature. But you just don't play enough hands for it to fucking matter. All that matters is, the last all in and things of that nature. But more importantly, like, Phil's going to recoup a lot of that EV simply by putting Daniel in very difficult spots where, like, when pots are small, it's not really going to matter anymore. So, like, redlining in small pots isn't that big of a deal. And when pots are extremely big, Phil just has it, right? Because, like, he's so linear in nature. He just never is at bottom, right? And I'm not saying that makes Phil a favorite by any stretch. I definitely don't think that's true. If we're betting no odds, I take Daniel 100% of the time. Yeah. Without question.
For sure.
But if you're going to lay me 4-1, I'll take Hellmuth every single fucking time.
Yeah. Yeah. Even like 3-1. Like, it's just like Hellmuth is.
I just don't think
do fine.
I just think in that format, it's really difficult to be that big of a favorite.
Yeah. Yeah. Because the blinds escalate, and he's just like not going to punt it, which is like annoying, right?
You're also just playing. Never punt it. You're playing 300 hands to conclusion, right? Like the match literally ends in 300 hands, so it's just like the amount of variance and volatility. Yeah, it's so impossible. It's like when Doug tweeted, "For those of you who are betting me as a 2-1 favorite for any one given match, stop it. it's literally impossible. No matter how good I am, no matter how big my win rate is, it's literally impossible for me to be a 2-1 favorite over Daniel in any one session of 600 to 800 hands.
Yeah, I didn't even know that. I thought maybe it was a thing. You know, I was getting action at 2-1. And I was betting obviously Daniel's side at 1-2 or whatever. But yeah, okay. Oh, I was gonna. Oh, okay. So talking about, have you watched a little bit of the high stakes poker stuff or no?
Yeah, I saw the most recent episode.
The one where he folded Ace King.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Genius.
I was having this discussion with some friends, and it was like, it's always about Lynn. Like, I don't know why. It's always about Lynn. They're like, would you take Lynn or Phil Hellmuth? And I was like, Lynn, what are you talking about? Like, I'm like, this guy's folding Ace King to Dwan's. Like,
Right.
What are you talking about?
Hellmuth's,
Like,
Hellmuth's floor and ceiling are maybe like 1 or 2 big blinds per 100 difference, right? Like his floor may be that he's like literally winning 0, and his ceiling might be like 2 big blinds per 100.
Yeah, it's like, what are you talking about? This guy's never like, he's at the mercy of making nuts.
Like, but the thing is, you can't lose much that way. So like his floor is actually relatively high, but his ceiling is so goddamn low that it doesn't compensate.
Okay, so just for everyone that didn't follow, right, and the Ace King hand. So in this hand, Lazaro, I believe his name is Lazaro.
Sure. If you're gonna put the Spanish spin on it, then yeah. But like, you know, we're gonna call him Lazaro. You call him Laz.
Lazaro. His name is Lazaro.
Okay, sure.
Okay, so Lazaro limps like under the gun of 1, and they're like 7-handed or something. It folds to Durr, who ISOs with like some dusty hand. I think it was like Jack 7.
Jack 10.
Oh, that's not dusty. That's pretty good. Okay.
I think it was like Jack 10 off.
Okay, so he ISOs Jack 10 off. Then Hellmuth is in the blind. I believe the big blind. The big blind. And he just flats Ace King offsuit, which is weird against a range that is, it's Durr. Like, it's Durr's ISO range.
I was confused by the whole hand. I thought Laz straddled and that everybody had limped to Laz. And then he just like peers down and was like, oh, hello?
No. Lazaro limped.
Okay.
And then like probably like another limp and then an ISO.
Yeah. There was definitely multi-way action.
And then Hellmuth flats, which I didn't understand at all, because the most likely scenario is that Lazaro is going to call, right? Like with like 10-8 off or whatever.
Yeah, he's super wide.
Yeah, and then it just goes multi-way with you out of position with Ace King off, which is strange.
You might have been right. It might have been Durr had Jack 7 suited. He definitely flopped the Jack. I remember that part.
I thought he had Jack 7 of diamonds. That's what like, he's just in there with the red. You know, he the red suits are the aggressive suits for Durr. You know. Okay, so then it didn't make any sense. So then Lazaro now limp 3 bets.
To like 15K.
Durr peels. Yeah. And as you see the action
Jack 7
here.
clubs.
And all right, so the black suits are the aggressive suits for him. And then he just folds. He like talks to him. He's like talking to him like, oh, you got something? You just want to give it to me? And then like Lazaro says something back to him, which he read as strong, and he just mucks the hand.
Yeah. And
he goes, okay. And he just, and then a king flops. And I'm sad that they didn't fucking zoom in on his face. Like, but this is the type of play. Okay, this is the reason why people say Phil Hellmuth sucks. It's not that, you know, they hate him or whatever, but this doesn't make any sense.
It does though.
0 sense.
It does though. Like from a live perspective, I understand where he's coming from. There are just spots where like people are just way too tight and don't possess bluffs. Right, and like Laz just isn't bluffing there ever. So
he's not.
Hellmuth was in a best case scenario. He was in a best case scenario where he was chopping with Laz, and he still has Durr to contend with. I'm not justifying the fold. Obviously, he's just 3-bet Durr to begin with. But like when your main emphasis in your strategy is to play conservative to a fault, to play conservative in a way where he's never, ever trying to maximize value with less than the nuts, right? Never. Literally, it is of no interest to Hellmuth. And because he's never trying to maximize value with less than the nuts, he doesn't have to worry about incorporating bluffs or bottom of range to help those stronger hands perform, right? He just lets them perform to their raw equity and lets people make mistakes versus his range over and over and over again because they either aren't disciplined enough to fold bluff catchers versus a range that is completely bounded and devoid of bluffs, or because he's just never putting in a ton of money unless he's on the right side of coolers. Set over sets, trip over trips, straight over straight, flush over flush, right? He just plays everything that's non-nutted conservative enough to the point where like he loses when he's against better hands, or he wiggles his way out, right? Like he lets a board 4 flush whenever he has a straight, or he, whatever. Like he lets himself get bluffed in a bunch of spots where it's very clear to anybody who's competent at this game that he just needs to be calling with more hands in these situations. Otherwise he's being exploited. He builds a strategy around the exploitability of being conservative. But what he gains through all of that is a tremendous reduction of risk. Fact of the matter is, the more evolved poker becomes, the greater the risk factor every time you enter a pot, right? Because the more the skill gap's closed, the closer to 50-50 any one interaction is, right? So
you become indifferent. A lot of things become indifferent.
Right. We're fighting for micro edges, right? We're fighting for a 1%, 3%, 4% skill edge that's incredibly small and requires a fuck ton of capital to invest in order to get marginal returns, right? You may have to risk 5 or 10 million to see a few $100,000 in return, right? You may have to risk 5 or 10 million to make a $500,000 a year in bets, right? So Hellmuth recognizes this. He recognizes he's not comfortable risking 5 or 10 million to make a $500,000. And instead, he would much prefer to just put himself in a scenario where maybe he's only risking like 1 or 2 million to make 2 or 300,000, but it's relatively secure because people are still bad enough to make errors against him. If everybody just understood the way that he's exploitable and just never gave the guy action, he'd be out of poker, or he would strictly play tournaments, right? But he plays soft Silicon Valley games where they want to say they beat Hellmuth in a pot.
Yeah, but it's interesting how he said this in a tweet, I believe. He was just like, oh, like in 2012, the new kid said I was done, and then I won a bracelet. And then in 2015, the new kid said I was done, and then I won another bracelet. And then in 2017, they said I was done and I won another one. In 2020, they said I was done and I won another one. And it's like, they said Antonio was going to beat me. I beat him 3 times in a row. Like, I've won 24 out of the last 25 filmed cash games. Like, I mean, I go to the airport, I don't need a fucking ID. Like, the guy's kind of a little bit of a legend. Like,
yeah. And the thing is that, like, fuck everybody who says he's bad. Because they're all the people that are contributing to his win rate. Literally every one of these arrogant people who think that like he's not technically sound, he's not game theory optimal, yada, 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 are the ones that are exactly contributing to his win rate. Because they play against the guy in the middle stages of a tournament and they don't recognize that he's completely vapid of bluffs and just like always fucking has it. And they pay him off with the third nuts, or they pay him off with their best bluff catcher. Or they say, like, I block all of his good hands, I have to call, and he still just shows up with the fucking better hand.
It's
like,
hard, man.
That's hard. What I mean. Like... That's everybody who's criticizing him also at the same token can't deprogram themselves to exploit the fact that he's exploitable, right?
That's the thing, because it's like, this is the hard part, right? Because this happens to me even when I play, right? Like, I'm playing someone, and you just have a really good hand, right? And they just bet big on the river, and you have a very good hand. And you're like, but this person just doesn't bluff. But maybe he's bluffing this one time because your hand has all the properties that force you to that path, right? It's like it unblocks everything. It like has the nut catcher, right? It's like you have to call this hand, and it's like So you call, and then he just shows you once again the hand that he's supposed to have. And in a tournament, like you're mentioning, it's very costly because you're not going to have the opportunity to get that back.
Right.
Like Hellmuth's going to just now have 80 big blinds and fold his way to another stage in the structure, and we're not going to see those.
He's also not
again,
Kessler, right? He's not Kessler. He doesn't try to navigate these fields by just like literally folding his way to the top. He gets in the mix. He just gets in the mix very passively and conservatively. You know, he calls a lot of raises. He traps. He limps a lot from spots. And, you know, he forces people to put in money actively against him when he's at the top of his range. Yeah. And that's just going to win if nobody's willing to adjust. And the thing is, nobody wants to adjust.
It's one of those things that really, really people should just fold rivers to him, like unconditionally, unless they have like
even just like earlier
5-card hand.
Yeah, even just like earlier in hands. Like if you're estimating that in a normal spot, your hand has like 40% equity against range, well, you have to say like what equity does it have against Hellmuth's range, you know? So it's like if you have 2 overs and a flush draw that aren't drawing to the nuts, and you're facing a bet from Hellmuth who you think is only betting like 2 pair plus and nut flush draws, suddenly your 50% equity hand goes down to like 20. And it's just like, oh, this is an insane fold, but like that's what I'm supposed to do, versus a guy who literally has constructed a strategy around the fact that we are all too stupid to stop paying him off.
Around value. Yeah, it's one of the first things you taught me actually, like early on. You were like, your strategy is constructed around value. Your strategy should be constructed around bluffs. And at the time, like, it was really hard to understand that, but it makes sense. It's like, no, like your bluffs first.
Right. They help your value perform, right? Value's easy. Nobody needs to put any thought into how to better play value. The way you better play value is that you have bluffs to complement it so that it performs better. It forces people to call you more. And so long as that is true, now you start printing money at the top and you hope that you're bluffing at the proper frequencies where you're breaking even with them. Shorty?
I lost you for a second.
Oh, I thought you were going to.
No, I lost you for a second. No. I lost you for a second. So, say that part again. The complement of value.
I'm just saying that like value is very simple to play because it's transparent, right? It's like, oh, you have the nuts, so you should bet it. The true way to play value better is to complement it with proper bluffs. If you have a bluffing frequency, period, your value will increase its EV by some percentage, right? If you complement your bluffs perfectly to your value, you'll maximize the EV of value. So the concept is that you want to be able to bluff to a point where you're breaking even with the bluffs and you are now increasing exponentially what your value hands are worth. Because essentially you want to pose a math problem to your opponent where when they call, you're totally indifferent. Because you're going to lose X amount when they catch you bluffing, but essentially like that'll break even based off how much extra value you made at the top.
I have a theory in why live players don't really ever bluff, and it's because, or are really bad at bluffing, and it's because so many pots go multi-way and you just can't bluff.
I think that's very. It's funny. I was kind of having a little bit of fun with you in the group chat the other day when we were sweating our horse. But every time that what I felt to be a very clear spot came up, the disclaimer from you and the horse but it's multi-way, I just find that to be like so laughable. It's just like if you are in a game with 6 relatively incompetent people, which is what's going to happen when hands go multi-way quite often, is you just have speculative players who play way too many fucking hands. Your high equity hands are just your high equity hands.
I like that term, Burke.
Which?
Speculative players. Like, let's invite some speculative players to the game.
Yeah, they live and die by the let's see 3 mantra.
I like that. You know, like all these other terms like VIP. No, he's a speculative player, bro. This guy's a speculative player. Let's invite some specs. That sounds racist though.
You're getting close.
I don't know, man. I feel like people don't bluff. I mean, in the games I've played in my life, like when it's multi-way and a bet goes in, and they're facing 3 people, It's hard. People don't bluff.
But that's because people use too big of sizes. Like multi-way, you just bluff cheaper. You can start bluffing for like 10%. The whole purpose of like a pro bet on the flop multi-way is to clean up equity to the point where now you are still against a relatively wide defending range, and you're now in a heads up spot, right? Because now leverage just if you're in a 4-way pot and you can get it to heads up where the person that called you is the one who was closing the action anyway, you can guarantee that that's the widest defending range because they don't have anybody else to think about. And now you're in a situation where you're probably in position. So you just have everything leveraging in your favor moving forward. You're the uncapped range. You have the position. The pot is now heads up, so equity is being distributed more evenly between the two of you. Everything is just like working in your favor. And when that fails, who gives a shit? You bet small.
I like that. So let's talk about Poker Out Loud. I did want to talk about that because it's something that that was recorded, and I guess we never really got the chance to like kind of discuss your experience and the experience of the group and when people should expect it. I saw some discussion in the group chat today of like the vloggers getting some of their clips. Give me kind of your experience of this go around, as well as like maybe one of your favorite hands that either you saw or that you played.
Okay. Yeah, we may be a little premature on this just because it's launching in 12 days. So the vlogger episode 1 will be out March 2nd, which is a Tuesday, I believe. And we'll be releasing new episodes every Tuesday for 10 weeks. The sub-site, I believe we are launching March 1st, that Monday, or March 4th, that Thursday. I honestly can't recall, but whatever it is, that's going to be the weekly launch time for each of them. The vlogger edition was really fun. I didn't get to watch all of the play, but I sat in for maybe the first orbit or so, and then the last orbit. There's a banger of a hand that ends the season. So the very last hand that they play between Johnny Vibes and Matt Vaughn is kind of a monster. It's a real head scratcher. I think they're all 6 players are probably going to do some sort of analysis on this hand. It was a 4-bet pot. It was just pretty interesting. So I think that one was pretty cool. Our session, well, I guess I should clarify who the vlogger session was. It was Matt Vaughn, Johnny Vibes, Marley, Rampage Poker, Trevor Savage, and who am I leaving off? Oh, and Landon. Yeah, of course, the non-vlogger. Yeah. So I think that one's going to be pretty good. The subscription site one was so much fun, man. I think that we've come so far from season 1 where it was more of a dick waving contest where we were so deep. We just wanted to see how out of line we could all get. And the idea wasn't really to create a training product. It was more so to create something that was entertaining where you could kind of get in the minds of how different archetypes thought. You know, we had Jack, who was relatively tight. We had Jordan, who was just off the rails loose. We had you that was super stuck and kind of getting a little bit out of line here and there. And then Nick and I, who were, controlled madness, if you will. We were within our
controlled, maximally exploitative.
Yeah, we were within our own boundaries of construction, but we were way outside that of optimal. And it was just creating a pretty chaotic environment. And I think that that's super fun to watch. Knowing that it was 2017, I think gives it a little bit of a pass as far as what qualified as decent strategy back then. But if you look at
it wasn't, but I agree with you. It wasn't necessarily, it was an entertainment product more than it was a training product at the time.
Yeah.
If you had to split it in how much is it training? How much can you watch this and then implement in your game? It was probably 25%.
It should never be that though. Even this
I agree with you.
Yeah, even season 5, which I think is really fucking good poker. It's me, Landon, Jeremiah Williams, Lynn, and Chris Konvalenka. I just think it's really sound poker, really sound thought processes. But even still, nobody should watch it and say oh, I'm going to do that in my next session. That's not the purpose at all. So whether you're talking about season 1 or season 5, the clear value proposition of this product is that you get to listen in on the thoughts of archetypes that you'll find in your own environment, right?
Yeah.
So you get to hear how somebody like Landon or Jeremiah, who are effectively children of the sim, how they work through their thought processes. And you can kind of try to either poke holes in that or adopt a little bit of that thinking, that linear thinking, that logical thinking yourself. You get to hear a little bit more of somebody like Chris, who is far less refined from a game theory standpoint, but he's super calibrated to the live environment, right? There are a couple of hands where it's just like he misses so clearly that he's not against a bounded range. Like he's against Jeremiah in a spot where like it one lines. And Chris's commentary was something to the effect of like, he just can't have any bluffs here. And he ends up folding like top of range, like ace king on a king high board. And Jeremiah just has fours. And it's like, yeah, that's
he's supposed to have
yeah,
fours.
that's what he's gonna find, because you know you have to reach and you have to be able to think along those pathways, you know. So I think that that's always the takeaway from the study standpoint. It's never I'm so impressed by the way that hand was played, or I'm so impressed by this mechanical thing that Landon consistently does, or whatever the case. It's not that. It's hearing a well thought out, formulated line of logic and saying like, okay, I know exactly the types of player in my game who think along these lines, and now I have a better roadmap on how to approach them. And then I know a bunch of other players who definitely do not think along these lines. And so if they're missing all these details, these are areas where I can exploit them, right? Otherwise, it's just a lot of fun. You know, it's back and forth. There's some shit talking taking place. I'm pretty sure Lynn called every one of us a monkey at some point or another throughout the session. You know, that type of stuff I think is just like good TV, if you will.
Was there a hand that you played that you kind of are excited to watch?
I don't think so. It was a tale of variance that isn't very impressive. I ran super hot day one, where I just had like nutted hands in bluff catching spots. I picked off a hand versus Jeremiah where I had ace queen on a queen high board, and he went for it. It was like queen 4 deuce in a 3-bet spot where I c-bet flop small, and he went for the raise and then just barreled off with ace 5.
Okay.
So I just, I picked that one off for 200 blinds. I won another one. I ended up winning, like, on day one, I think I ended up winning massive, like 600 or 700 blinds, something like that.
Wow.
And then day two, I lost like 600 blinds, boat over boat and trips over trips.
Okay,
so just blind versus blind. I just flopped trips versus trips. And then in a multi-way pot, I get underboated on 5-4, 4, 9, 6, where I have 6-4. What are you gonna do?
What are you gonna do, man?
Yeah.
Are you is there any more upcoming like TV appearances for you? I saw this last episode of like the escalator or whatever.
Yeah, there'll be another.
I don't like that that format is not like it's not fun.
It's funny because like I hate it too, but I actually think it's interesting to watch. What I don't like about it is that like you bust and you leave. Like I don't like the tournament element of it.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, but then it would just be like a 10K cap.
Yeah,
right?
I think that's so much better. Like keep it a 10K cap and let the blinds escalate. Because then you have to make a choice, right? Like now all of a sudden you're playing 200, 400. It's like, do I want to come back in with 25 bigs or do I just want to call it?
Yeah, that is cool. That is cool. The fact that you bust and then it's kind of weird. Like, what would happen if 4 people bust? You guys are gonna play like heads up?
Yeah, for sure. It happened before.
Weird.
They ran this format before. I think it was a 25K cap, and we did 1 reload. Okay. Oh no, it was a 25K cap, no reloads, and we allowed 1 to 1 person. So we drew high cards, and whoever drew the highest card was allowed to reload once. This was probably like 18 months ago, 2 years ago. It was like me, Benba.
I remember this. That never got aired though. This was like a prototype, right?
No, I'm pretty sure it got aired. I'm fairly confident it got aired. But yeah,
was Carrie in it?
No. You're talking about the one where I swung $1 million in each way.
Yeah.
No. This was just like, this was in Poker Go Studios for sure.
Okay.
But it was over in like 3 hours.
So
Like
it
it
was
was just lights
a lot
out.
of speculative players.
I think we made it to like the second blind level and just like they were heads up.
Okay. All right. Well, it seems like some of the news that came out also was Veronica is the new host of Poker After Dark, which I thought was great.
Yeah.
How do you see that like developing? Like, so they filmed the new season, right? And I didn't really get to. There wasn't like any like, I guess there was some leaks of who's in it. I saw that Marley was in it based on one of the Instagram posts from Veronica. And then we know that, I'm not sure if we should say if other people who's in it, but
I mean, whatever. Like I know
this is why people this is why people come to our show. Like,
and
Landon
also
is
just
in
like
it.
yeah, also just like this doesn't hurt Poker Go, it only helps them. Blazarian had a game the first day, so it was like Blazarian, Perkins, Aoki, just everybody that you'll want to see if you don't care about watching good poker. A very rich man's game, if you will.
Speculative game.
Yeah, a lot of speculating going on there. Prospectors, if you will, like gold prospectors. They're just out there mining for the good stuff. Then the next two sessions were what you already referenced. It was like Marley, Landon got to play, Alex Ding got to play in a bunch of lineups. Chicken Wing Frank, I don't know his last name, but Frank the Tank, you know who I'm talking about. He won a WPT.
Oh yeah, Frank the Tank, baby, let's go.
WPT Gardens. Guy. Yeah, he played in a bunch of sessions. So I think it's going to be a good mix. And then the last couple sessions were like Lynn, Mattisau, I think, or no, Mattisau played in Landon's lineup.
Yeah, it's like I think Lynn might be the biggest name of that last group.
That last group was the biggest game for sure.
The biggest game.
They all played the same stakes. No, they all played 1-2.
Wow.
With the exception of Landon's lineup. Landon played 51. But outside of that, they all played like 1-2. But I'm saying that like Lynn's two games played by far the largest. They played a lot of 400, a lot of 800. Jake Daniels is in the game. He makes it very big. But yeah, it's gonna be a lot of the same faces that you saw in season 1, I think.
In the first in the season 1 Poker After Dark,
or not season 1, the most recent one that's airing.
Season 1 of the modern new edition was what you mean, right?
I don't know. I mean, how many new editions are there?
I don't know, man. That's another thing. Like, I'm a little bit confused in terms of like how many seasons are they? One season is 5 days of filming. That's what I read. But this feels like we just had this should still be season 1, in my opinion.
Yeah.
What do you mean? Like, is it new season? Like,
also, it's just
it's still winter. It's still winter.
Yeah.
Like, what are you talking?
It's
you
also
have 2 seasons within 1 season.
It's like sports. Like, it doesn't need seasons. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, man. Like, wait until 20.
Like what's the Poker After Dark off season?
I don't know.
when
you completely pause. Like, you have to pause.
Like, when are they training? When are they home and seeing their families? World Series? I don't know.
I'm confused, man. I don't know what they're talking about, but it was a little confusing. Okay, last topic was you did a webinar this last week.
Yeah.
I saw that it went pretty well. You were excited about it. Tell people about like the webinar and stuff, and what was it about?
So it was a continuation of the mastermind I did last month, which I think last month was significantly better. I got the results of the Sims too close to the start, and I didn't botch one, but it just didn't tell us much, and I spent too much time analyzing it only to come to the conclusion that it just didn't tell us much. But a good representation of what the mastermind is was exemplified, I think, by a Finding Equilibrium video recently, where he talks about like GTO bucketing. And this is a concept that is pretty near and dear to me in the sense that I think it's the only way to practically apply poker strategy in the live realm. And I was talking to Landon about this, of how much things come in waves in this community, where it was like, if we're talking about like 7-8 years ago when the solver wave finally hit and game theory was clearly going to be a default line of logic that we utilize in this game. At that point, it was just like, okay, we've built these engines and they have answers for us. Everybody brace yourself. Right. And now it was all the data analysts came out of the woodwork and like, I'm going to be fucking good at poker. And they just, they started running scripts and they're running all these sims and they're just looking at them. They're like, yo, I know what I'm doing here. Okay. So like I can simplify and I can bet third pot on all boards and everybody's fucked because the field is just going to still overfold. And, I have this roadmap to printing money. And they were right. They were absolutely right because there was a lot of hubris in poker. There still is. And people are very slow to adapt. So these new strategic trends caught on, right? Like down betting became a thing. Everybody was in there, third potting. Not everybody, but like the good players were now evolving into third pot strategies. And they were just mimicking what they saw. They didn't care why it worked. All they knew was that it fucking worked. And they knew exactly what to do after they third potted on most board textures, right? Or maybe not that they knew exactly what to do, but they had a plan of what to do. They had an
idea.
Yeah. Whether it was correct or not doesn't really matter. They had a follow-up. They weren't lost, right? And that just put them miles ahead of everybody else who was lost in the weeds trying to brain solve in real time and just saying like, I feel comfortable with this hand or I don't feel comfortable with this hand. And so it's like, I'm going to, whatever. So they really exploited the fact that people were fallible and they stuck rigidly, and I mean rigidly, to the plan of attack of this is what the solver says, this is what I'm going to do, yada, 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 right? Well, eventually the field started to catch up. So fast forward to like 2016, 2017, and now all of a sudden mixing is all the rave, right? So we're no longer just pure betting third pot on flops. We have to like look at the different textures and we recognize that there are mixed strategies and, we have to work in balanced checkbacks. And now all of a sudden, and you can attest to this, when we started preparing for Dead Money, when we bucketed people as studied or GTO type of players, we immediately just blanketed said that they'll check back flop too much, right?
Yeah, it was either like the strategy was super simple. It was either they check back the flop or they're tripling all 100%, high frequency.
100%, right? Like if they start bet, expect a trip, period.
Yeah,
because they're only starting bet on advantageous boards now, right?
Right. It was either like bet and then like effectively it was either bet, give up forever,
right?
Start with the check, or bet. Those are the only three options.
Yeah, there was like three lines that we saw, and the only double barrel lines that we saw, the only double barrels that we saw that didn't result in triple barrels were bet, check, bet when they improved on the river. So like the river play was just like pretty exploitable because nobody was really bluffing quite enough at that point.
Yeah.
Otherwise, if it just went bet in that cadence, you knew for a fact that third shell was coming and that like it was just always signifying of a trip. And you just didn't really see the check back, bet all that often either, right? It was like, it was either check, bet or check, bet, check, bet, check, because it was mostly marginal hands. So now mixing becomes very in vogue and everybody's all on the balance train. And, now it's not even good enough to be a child of the sim. You have to be that's level 1 bullshit, man. I don't want to hear about your simplified flop strategies. I run aggregates, right? I got reports that say I'm aggro as fuck on these textures and I'm passive. So, it starts to delve into the mixing realm, right? And people aren't good at it by nature. So randomization became a thing. And a lot of people spent a lot of time trying to figure out how to randomize pre-flop, how to randomize post, all this other shit, right? So that got refined. People got very good at it. You can look at the Heads Up challenge now between Doug and Daniel to the point where pre-flop was just standardized. None of them made pre-flop decisions. It was all they were just victim to the randomization, right? Now you fast forward to like 2020, 2021, And what people are recognizing is that, oh, we're still playing against humans and they fucking suck, because now we have mass data that just tells us that they fucking suck. So even with all these mixes, even with all these sims, even with all the randomization, we can still just find hotspots where it's like everybody's underperforming on these particular streets. Everybody's underperforming on these particular flop textures with their c-bet strategies. Nobody is complicating things enough. They're still choosing one-side strategies, yada, 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 yada. And what ultimately people are arriving at is, let's go pure again. Let's follow the incentive of the fucking hand. I don't care. Like, one of the things that I hear getting kicked around about like elite level heads up players, I think Doug said this in an interview, is they don't think about it as range versus range. They think about it as their hand, the incentives of said hand, and how that actually mirrors their opponent's range's defense strategy. And that makes sense, because truly,
I feel like we've been, but like, ironically, like, you've been saying that for a long time.
Yeah.
Like you've been saying like no, like, just play your hand, and like this hand is going to shift him that way,
Right.
and then you play that way. Yeah, it's kind of ironic, right?
well, I mean, it's logical. It wasn't an accident that I arrived at that conclusion. That's what card removal does, right?
Yeah.
Whenever you have a hand that eliminates certain candidates from your opponent's range, it means that he's imbalanced, period. That's the whole problem. Is like the concept of balance assumes that either both hands are unknown, or that somehow multiple of the same card exist in the deck, right? Because the second that you have the ace of spades and he can't have the ace of spades, he becomes capped. And if he's capped, his availability to balance is just restricted, right? It's just limited. So I think that, like, you know, we've been saying this for 5 years now that we've been in a company. The evolution is, you start to play and you think about your exact hand and where it ranks in the hand ranking order. Is it good? Is it bad?
Yeah.
You know, one pair beats two, or two pair beats one pair, trips beat two pair, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Then you start thinking about like how your hand plays against the best possible hand your opponent could have. So you start to look at your hand, and then you look at the board and you say, what's the nuts? And you say, oh, 9-10 is the nuts. I hope he doesn't have 9-10. But I have a pretty good hand because I have a set. And so like I play accordingly. Assuming he doesn't have 9-10, I get to make a lot of money, right?
Yeah.
Then the next evolution is, well, I have a range. So what does my range do against the best hand that he could potentially have? And so you start thinking in a range versus hand type comparison of like, okay, well, I have this cluster of hands that fit in this certain class that I want to bet. You know, I have hands that have like pair plus draw. I have hands that are sets. I have hands that are over pairs. All of these hands want to bet for different reasons: protection, for value, for bluff, yada, 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 right? So how does this cloud of hands perform against a hand my opponent could have? Well, if he's at the top of range, then I have X amount of equity. And that's really all I need to know, right? If he has the absolute best hand he has in his range, and I still have over the equity threshold necessary to continue, then I'm fine, right? I built my range out just fine, right? If he has the absolute top of range and I need 30% to continue, and I recognize that my hands are performing at 35%, I get to be aggressive, period. Simple. The last evolution previously was then range versus range. So how does my overall cloud of hands interact with my opponent's overall cloud of hands? But there's another step to that, right? And it's now analyzing or digging deeper into the micro of your range and saying, like, how does each one of my hands individually perform against my opponent's range? Because each one of my hands tells me something, right?
Yeah.
When I have this exact candidate with these exact suits, I know something more about his range. I'm able to narrow it a little bit more. And there are very specific incentives of this hand. So I do want to compare it to my global strategy, right? I want to look at this exact hand and say, like, okay, this hand wants to go aggressive. But now I do have to compare it to my global range, right? I have to say, like, does my range want to go aggressive? And if the answer is largely no, like, no, this is a super high frequency check. Okay, this is going to be a hand I utilize to protect my checking range, right? So we start to arrive at simple conclusions. This is a very long-winded explanation to basically say that, like, the last two masterminds have been an exercise in practical splits. So all we're looking at is when we arrive at mixed flop strategies where the solver kind of likes 2 or 3 sizes, and it also kind of likes a check, right? Like we use 9-6-3 rainbow in a single raise pot, for an example. It likes a big bet, like 15, 20% of the time. It likes a small bet, like 50, 60, actually might have been like closer to like 70% of the time. And it likes a small amount of checking, right? Like maybe 15, 20% of the time. That's like, well, when you look at the sim output, what you see is that all of the hands that big bet, also small bet.
Also small bet, yeah.
And sometimes check. Not all of them, but like some of them. Sometimes check, right?
Yeah.
And then all of the hands that small bet also sometimes check. And it's just like, how the fuck can you ever parse through all of this in real time when you're only going to see 100 hands in this entire session and you're playing against Janitor Joe, who you certainly...
He's not a janitor, bro. He's a speculator.
Is a speculative Sam over there, you know, Prospector Pete, who's just trying to fucking flop gin. You're playing against Bingo Bob, and it's just like,
Bingo Bob.
we don't need to be this goddamn precise to make money. As a matter of fact, we make more money by not being precise. We make more money by turning the error propensity on them trying to complicate or uncomplicate their counter strategy, right? So the simple thing you recognize is like, okay, if all the hands at small bet also check, do we need to check? What's the EV loss if we just don't check, right? And when you run it, it's like nothing. It's like, you know, 0.05 big blinds of the pot. So like you're just losing nothing. It's like, okay, so now let's just have two bet sizes. And then you look at it and it's like, okay, well now if I reduce it just to 2 bet sizes, it's mixing. So every hand that bets big also bets small. That's problematic. So why don't we just look at the incentives of the two fucking ranges? And let's just say we're not going to bet big with top set because on 9-6-3, it just fucking blocks our opponent from having calls. And instead, let's bet big with middle set and bottom set, right? Okay, so now we have a really good hand in our smaller betting range. We have 2 really good subsets of hands in our big betting range. What else can we marry with this? Well, what other hands want to bet big? Hands that want to protect. So our 9X, particularly our strongest 9X, right? Ace 9, King 9, Queen 9. Okay, throw those in the big bet range, right? What else wants to protect? The overpairs that can get drawn out on easily. So 10s, jacks, queens. What hands don't care to big bet? Aces, kings. They don't need as much protection. We throw them in the small bet range, right? And you just practically split this way. And then we reran it and showed that we're losing like no fucking EV by taking this strategy. But you can intuitively look at this board and immediately know what your big bets are and what your small bets are.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that's the way. I think a lot of people, like a lot of the best players, do play like that, like when they're actually playing. Like when they're actually playing.
Yeah.
Yeah, like when they're playing and they have a spot that it's mixed, like they're just gonna say, okay, I have 6s, so I'm like always gonna big bet because I have 6s. You know, and then when they have 9s, they're like, well, I'm mostly gonna small bet, maybe sometimes check, and that's it.
Right.
You know?
Right.
They're not gonna, like, it's like pretty practical. And then like when they have queens, like they mostly choose the big bet. Like it's just like, you know, like whatever.
Well, and that's the biggest takeaway is that sure, if you're getting into mass data or mass volume where you're playing millions of hands a year, it's very, very critical that you're precise. You benefit a lot by being able to mimic a solve because the closer to that strategy you can apply over millions of hands, the more protected you are, and thus the more consistent win rate you have. However, if you're just one tabling, putting in very, very, very low volume, and you have an intimate knowledge of where your opponents are flawed, you're infinitely more incentivized to just maximize your exploits, right? And just play as practically as you possibly can to a point where it's unclear to them how you're deviating, but you're deviating, right?
Yeah.
And I think that like that's where I say I use this phrase a lot, but it's losing the forest for the trees, right? So you're too focused on the trees to actually see the forest, and that's a lot of what's happening here. When you're so insanely focused on the minutia of the splits and making sure that all of your frequencies are correct and that all your mixes are correct and that you're randomizing and all this other stuff, you've forgotten about the fact that the true purpose of game theory in most instances is just to give you heuristics to think logically. So if we can literally just have a heuristic that says middle set is higher EV to bet big than top set because middle set gets called by more top pairs. That's pretty simple, right? That's a pretty simple rule of thumb to abide by. And it's way easier for people to understand that strategically than recognizing that like, oh, well, 6s goes hyper aggressive 72% of the time, and 18% of the time they small bet, and 10% of the time they actually check back for the sake of protecting range, and like all of these things intertwine to earn you an extra 6 cents.
The 6 cents is true. It's true. All right, I thought the conversation was awesome today. I'm really happy I got to join in today. I was I don't know. I was a little bit out of the game. I was like sick for fucking forever. But dude, don't lose the fucking ocean for the seas. Don't don't what else can we don't I don't know.
When are you coming back to Vegas?
Don't lose the ocean for the seas. I don't know, man. It's probably soon, man. It's like it's probably time to go back and,
all right, forget Vegas.
Evaluate.
Forget Vegas. Are you up for a March snowboarding trip?
Yeah, I'm going. I already told Dan.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Second week of March, we all want to go to Tahoe.
Yeah, I told Dan I'm in. I spoke to him about it.
The fuck out. I don't believe you for a second.
Bro, what are you talking about, bro? I told Dan, Dominican on skis, get ready.
Let's go. Let's go. Okay, I'm pumped for this. I'll even take lessons with you. I don't care. I'll do it again. I don't think I'm good enough or like I'm here.
Good. I've never been on a fucking ski.
No. Snowboard. You got to snowboard.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Anything.
Basically, I'm still bad enough where I want to recruit as many of my friends as possible to at least get to my level of bad, before I get good. Because if I end up getting good, then I'm just gonna be isolated. It's just gonna be me and Dan, and I don't enjoy his company that much.
Yeah, I told Dan I was in. I'm definitely going. So,
nice. All right. Okay.
I told him Dominican on skis. He started laughing.
It's like the Jamaicans with a bobsled team.
Because I was like, Dan, what do you think's gonna happen with Bitcoin? And he's like, it's anybody's guess now, man. Nobody knows. Nothing makes any sense.
It's true. It really is true.
He's like, things said that it was gonna go down, and then all of a sudden we're breaking new all-time highs. I don't know anymore. I was like, bro, don't worry. Let's get some steak and let's go to Tahoe. And he's like, yeah, right. Let's go. He's like, oh man, Dan's awesome. But all right. Thank you, everyone. This was episode number 30, season number 2. I hope you all enjoyed. If you didn't get a chance to watch Berkey's webinar, please give it a watch. The subscription site is still only $9.99. It's way too cheap. Give it a watch. I'm sure it was amazing. I got a lot of positive reviews about it. If you haven't liked, if you haven't subscribed, please do so. If you leave a comment, tell me what you ate this morning. Tell us what you thought about certain parts of what we talked about. Tell me what you think about Ted Cruz going to Cancun in the middle of Texas being in a completely wiped out, no lights or anything. He's chilling in Cancun. Let me know. With that, have a good night.